Hi, and welcome everybody. I'm Lisa Fain, CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence, and here in my capacity as an ambassador to the board of the International Mentoring Association. I'm so excited to continue our interview series with mentoring experts and delighted today to have with us Dr. David James. I have about 1 million questions for Dr. James because he's been doing mentoring for quite a while. But before I dive in and ask them, let me tell you a little bit about him. Dr. David James is the President Emeritus of the International Mentoring Association. He actually has the longest tenured president of the IMA in the IMA history. He's an internationally known leader and an expert on training, establishing, and evaluating mentoring programs. He's made numerous presentations on mentor and protege training and the essential elements, for comprehensive formal mentoring programs. His workshops and training have included colleges, universities, private and public industries, corporations, community organizations, and private and local school systems. He began his career at Prince George's Community College in 1971 as Assistant Director of Community Services. I believe that's in Maryland. Is that right, Dr. James?
That is correct.
And he's also well known for developing the mentoring program for African American, Latino, and Native American students at the college, which is now called ALANA. He was the project director of the Black and Minority Student Retention Programs, which was Prince George Community College's program that was cited by U.S. News and World Report in October of 1989 as one of the nation's best among two-year community colleges. He's published on the subject of mentoring and retention, and his program at Prince George's Community College was featured in Black Issues in Higher Education. In the July of 1989, he was a recipient of the Individual Retention Excellence Award for the Noel Levitt Centers for Institutional Effectiveness and Innovation. He received the President's Medal from Prince George's Community College for exemplary service. I could go on and on, but I'll tell you just two more things that caught my eye. Is that in 2011, the Dr. David P. James Faculty Mentoring, Peer Mentoring, and Staff Excellence Awards were named in his honor, recognizing the annual achievement of faculty, peer, and staff mentors at Prince George's Community College. And finally, in March 2012, the IMA presented to Dr. James the Legacy Award for his services and president of IMA and his exemplary leadership in the mentoring profession. Dr. James, welcome.
Thank you. What an introduction.
So excited that you're here. Well, I have 1 million questions. So let me dive in with the first one, which is, how did you come to the field of mentoring in the first instance?
Well, basically, I really became involved in the field of mentoring at Prince George's Community College. We received a grant from the state of Maryland to deal with the attrition rates, particularly of Black male students at the institution. We submitted the grant request. It was funded. I was named the project director of that program. I put an enormous amount of energy in the program and also made sure that I had trained mentors and plenty of tutorial support and mentoring activities to make sure that this initiative was successful. It paid off, and in one semester, the retention rate of Black male students increased from 46% to 88% from one semester to the following semester. And from that point on, we began to get a national reputation at Prince George's Community College. Then in 1987, there was a mentoring conference at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I was a participant at that mentoring conference. And out of that mentoring conference, which was very successful, I met lots of individuals who were also interested in mentoring, which piqued my interest, and my participation and workshop received quite a few positive responses. And as a result of the mentoring conference at Western Michigan University, that led to the impetus to form later on the National Mentoring Association, which is now called the International Mentoring Association. So that gives you a little bit of experience dealing with my background.
That's great. So, you talked about this amazing increase in retention of African-American males at Prince Georges Community College. What was it that mentors were doing that
Well,
made that
basically,
program successful? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Basically, we drew up I believe, informal mentoring.
Mhm.
And we drew up specific contracts with these Black male students. And we focused on a number of goals. One was an academic goal. Another one was a leadership goal. Another goal was a career goal. And another one was a learning outcome goal.
Mhm.
And we focused on those specific areas where each mentor and mentee were held accountable to make sure that these agreements were reached. And we wanted to make sure that we saw success. And believe it or not, under the leadership of not only me, but also the mentors who bought in the program and the Black male students who also bought in the program, this is why this program was a success. It was recognized by the Maryland Association of Higher Education, and also we received quite a write-up in U.S. News and World Report dealing with our retention programs with a focus on Black male success in the United States News and World Report. What was significant about this was the fact that this was the first time that Prince George's Community College had received national recognition for any program since its beginning. So of course, this put us on the map, and from there, we moved forward. I tried to give you a quick summary of how it began.
I love that. So each of those four outcomes, were those the same outcomes for each mentoring pair, or did each pair organically choose its own within each of those categories?
We wanted to make sure in the beginning that the focus would be on those four.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to make sure that we would retain our mentees, first of all, we wanted to focus on the academics. And on those academics, we went high. We wanted to make sure that these students' grades did not drop below a B, basically a C. We wanted to make sure, again, that the primary, because we did not want any excuses to be made that there was too much emphasis on other activities other than academics. On the leadership goal, the first thing we wanted to make sure was to make sure that our mentees showed up for their scheduled meetings with their mentors, because we considered it to be a waste of time if we were to schedule meetings with our mentees and they did not show. And following that, in terms of a career goal, we wanted to make sure that our students had a specific career goal in mind. And if they were to change their minds, we wanted to make sure that they contacted their mentor first before just going into an office and saying, that I want to switch majors. And then following that, the learning outcome goal, for each meeting, we wanted to make sure that there was an agenda, and the agenda was prepared to make sure that we wanted to make sure that in these meetings, the mentee could tell us new knowledge, new insights they had gained as a result of previous meetings with their mentor, either new insights or new knowledge they had acquired on their own. And this was the reason why the program proved to be a success. And I still hold that philosophy today.
Yeah, the structure is so important. I mean, you have the combination of structure and accountability and goal focus that really is kind of that magic. It's not magic, but it is such important factors in that in the success of mentoring. Did you get some resistance from mentors about that level of structure?
I guess not too much, because we had training sessions for mentors. I wanted to make sure that with my knowledge of the institution and in explaining the program, I wanted to make sure that there were meaningful participants who will be willing to adhere to some of the structure and also the time. Fortunately, we had phenomenal success with the mentors who participated in the program. And also in terms of attrition rate, I can recall maybe only 2 or 3 mentors who said, I don't like this structure. I want to turn my mentees over, to another individual, because we had what was known as primary mentors and secondary mentors. And these secondary mentors were waiting in the wing to step in case we may have someone, to drop, from the program. My biggest regret is that today, in my opinion, in many institutions of higher education, that structure is gone. Too many informal meetings, no documentation. And I think we have strayed away from that. In fact, it is my strong belief that every institution who's experiencing retention or attrition problems should have a formal mentoring program where both the mentors and the mentees are held accountable. That is my belief 30 some years ago, and it's still my belief today, Lisa.
Yeah. How do you get, so, I'm not in the academic world. I'm I'm a practitioner in the corporate world. So it's a little bit of a different model. But, you and I both know that if you're a mentor, if you do mentoring right, it's an investment of time. It's investment of time and resources. So how do you get the mentors on board with the fact that this is going to really require some time for them to, to do it right and to have the kind of outcomes that they need?
Well, one of the things we had a series of workshops. We had training for both mentees and mentors. Then we had joint training with mentors and mentees. And from there, we were able to get them, to know one another. And basically, by having these series of meetings, not only the initial meetings, but we also had several luncheons and other form of social activities with both the mentees and the mentors involved, so we could hear from one another. And in case if there were any problems or any things that we needed to make sure we could improve upon, we wanted to make sure that all voices were heard. And I think, once again, I was just fortunate to have a group of participants who believed in our idea and our concept. And basically, that is how we proceeded to have this successful program.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the forms of resistance that sometimes I get from mentors, particularly people who consider themselves senior, consider themselves successful, are that, I was a good leader, so I can be a good mentor. And let me tell you, the key to my success has been having the ability to kind of wing it in my relationships and have informal conversations. So I don't need your structure. Thank you very much. I'll do it my way. Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm gathering from everything you're saying that you don't subscribe to that philosophy, nor do I. But what would you say to that person who says, look, the key to my successes that I have had, I'm really good at informal relationships, and that's how I want to structure my mentoring. That's how I want to conduct my mentoring relationship.
I'm not totally opposed to that. I think it depends on relationship building and the comfort level that one has, with one another. Because let's face it, some people can do better perhaps in an informal setting versus a formal setting. I'm just one that believes, particularly when it comes to students, students, that is more of a, I think you can get the results from a formal relationship where you can see documentation, and particularly based on the evaluation. at the end of the semester or at the end of the academic year, when you do your evaluation, when you can ask what benefits did you receive from the mentoring relationship, what were some of the pitfalls, highlights, perhaps lowlights, the most significant accomplishments, achievements, improvement suggestions, and things like that. I think that's where you can get that documentation from a formal relationship versus trying to remember through an informal way about how things, went during the mentoring relationship. Just a philosophy that I have, but I'm not totally opposed.
What do you think, what would your advice be to a new mentee to tell them how to get the most out of this relationship?
Goal. I guess basically when I think of goal, I'm thinking about insight. I'm thinking about leadership. And particularly, I'm thinking more or less about what is it that one wished to achieve, as a result of a mentor-mentee relationship. If you can identify, with a mentee, or mentee can identify with a mentor, I think that is one way that you can formulate goals. And I just believe there are a series of steps in which this relationship, can be developed. And I think as you get to know one another and with your comfort level, I think that is my means of trying to communicate, with one another. That is my philosophy.
Yeah. I'm just curious, from the program that you did at Prince George's, how many of those relationships continued after the student graduated from the college?
Quite a few years. It was always good to hear from the mentees who were successful, who graduated, and I still have contact even perhaps 30 years later from some of the mentees who were involved, in the program. My only regret is that I just do not see that happening today in a lot of institutions. Yeah. I think in some respects, Prince George's Community College being affected by the pandemic, loss of funding, chaos with what is going on in society today. Even though there is a mentoring program taking place at the institution, it is now focused once again more or less on Black male initiatives, but it is not what I consider to be, a college-wide, program. Mm-hmm. That's just my belief, but I'm no longer employed by Prince George's Community College, but that is the way I see it. Yeah. The other thing that I just wanted to say is that when I think about the International Mentoring Association, I cannot help but think about July 28th and 29th of 1988. And that was when, and I don't know how much of that history you all are aware of how the IMA was formed. Mm-hmm. And basically there were 11 individuals who met in the Community College of Rhode Island. And those 11 individuals met to form what is known today as the International Mentoring Association. But I say this because as a result of IMA being present and relevant today, I still think about those 11 individuals at Western Michigan University following a successful conference, moved with this meeting at Rhode Island to form the International Mentoring Association. And I guess that is why we're speaking here today.
It is. What was the impetus? Like what was the problem that you and those individuals were trying to solve when you formed the IMA in July of 88?
Good question. There was a lot of student attrition at Western Michigan University and at several large universities throughout the United States, particularly based on minority attrition. Minority students were being enrolled at institutions of higher education, but the institutions were not keeping those students. Mm. And for some reason, there was a lack of mentoring programs or just a lack of program to keep those students enrolled. And as a result of the problem recognized by Western Michigan University, there was a successful conference held that year. I believe it was 1987, late in 1987. And as a result of that successful conference, there were quite a few of us who said, we want to keep this momentum going. We want to make sure that mentoring is not forgotten about. And so as a result of that conference, I mentioned the 11 of us who went to the Community College of Rhode Island and met for 2 days to form what is now known as the International Mentoring Association. And I still remember the 11 members because at that meeting on the 28th, I, David James, moved to form a National Mentoring Association, and the motion was adopted. And basically from there, we moved as the years passed into what is known as the International Mentoring Association. The one, and I'm getting off a little bit, but the one person who has been forgotten in this movement was a lady by the name of Griselda Daniel, who was the leader in making sure that we follow up with the conference at Western Michigan University. And Griselda was the one who took the leadership role in having us meet at Rhode Island on those 2 days. And from there, the association was formed. Unfortunately for Griselda, there was a reorganization at Western Michigan University. So she was not able to remain actively involved with the association, but I did want to give credit to her because it was her leadership who really was the impetus in terms of us moving forward. I just want to make sure that that name was not forgotten in any mention of the International Mentoring Association.
That's terrific. So I love that you mentioned Griselda's name, and I think it's so important to remember the people who were instrumental in getting it started. What is it about mentoring that you think makes it have such a profound impact on retaining students, particularly students from marginalized backgrounds?
Positive interaction, a philosophical belief in one another. I have a definition of mentoring. For example, probably the author is unknown, like taking one under your wings, helping them to develop their own wings, and then later on watching them to develop a flight plan. Mm. And basically, I think, again, it has to do with interaction and just having a positive belief that no matter who you are, as long as you can identify with one another, and as long as there is a true purpose, that is my belief that mentoring can work. I may be a little off in your question, but I just have this passion, for successful student excellence. Yeah. And I believe that with both mentors who should be well prepared and being able to interact, particularly with the youth of today, we can still make this work. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're not off the question at all. That's just such a beautiful thing. I wonder, did you ever track whether these students had mentoring relationships, like they became mentors later on in their career? I bet you there's ripple effects from that program. Yes, I can name probably maybe 12 to 15 who have been successful and graduated from Prince George's Community College, going on to four-year institutions, presently serving on boards, active, in their communities. Also, them becoming community leaders, being active in the 100 Black men fraternities, and trying to make sure that as a result of their success, they can pass that success, to a generation, of new leaders. My disappointment is that some of them did not follow through, but overall, as a result of the mentoring program at Prince George's Community College, many have become active in terms of not forgetting where they came from and making sure that they are generating a new, I won't use the word breed, but new leadership in their communities to follow up, particularly in education. My concern is that with today's pandemic and with everything that's happening in today's society, social injustice and economic disparity, that we need new leaders today, particularly mentors who cannot be silent during this pandemic. And we need to make sure that they are trained to interact with other professionals such as sociologists, law enforcement officials, people who are concerned about what's taking place in the United States today, because I may get a little bit off, but one of the things I have a concern about is that we have a lot of young people who consider themselves leaders, but they do not have well-trained mentors. And mentors cannot be silent again during this period. And if these young people could have trained mentors who can teach them about civility and active leadership and positive leadership, and also if these young people could look up to strong leaders like perhaps you and I and others, and to make sure that they move in the right direction, I believe that there is a need for this. And this is one of the things that I would like to see the IMA to come more involved with youth leadership. And with youth leadership, I think will generate a new era of optimism. And so I have some more probably to say about this, but I'll move on with your questions.
No, that's, my next question was actually going to be, where do you see the future of mentoring and where do you see the most impact? So you anticipated that.
I'm sorry.
But no, it's good. That's a positive thing, not a negative thing. Let me ask you also, like, when you were president of the IMA for 12 years, it's a long time.
Yes.
What are some of your proudest accomplishments as president of the IMA, and what would you, in addition to focusing on youth leadership, what would you like to see the IMA doing in the future?
Well, I guess probably by being the longest serving president, of the IMA, and also seeing some board members who later became future IMA presidents, was a positive experience. But for example, we did, I think it was me and Dr. Allwood and Dr. Canton who did a webinar for the IMA, I think in January of this year. And we were talking about the IMA, the past, the present, and the future. And where is it the IMA should begin to focus more on. And I was very passionate about this in terms of recommendations. And I guess I was coming from the viewpoint that the IMA, with its broad membership internationally, should become more involved in what's happening in America and the international community today. And don't be afraid to deal with issues, such as racial injustice and inequality and other factors that are impacting not only America today, but also the international community. And I believe that with its broad leadership and with all of the talent we have in the IMA, that we can band, as I mentioned earlier, with sociologists and economists and politicians and law enforcement officials, and put our heads together and come up with programs and recommendations where we can do joint workshops dealing with all of these issues, and basically having the IMA to take a leading role, in this pursuit. And again, when I look at perhaps maybe the demographics, and I can't get a straight answer in terms of demographics of the present IMA today, and also about what regions, is our membership coming from, and basically how can we come together to form this coalition of leaders. So when one asks, what is the role of the IMA in terms of dealing with everything that's taking place today, the IMA is still a leading treasure house of individuals who are prepared and trained to deal with the issues of today's society by training mentors and having them to go out in respective communities internationally, and to be able to be a leading force in basically what is, I keep using the word, taking place in American society today. I just have a strong, passionate belief about that.
I think passions are important, and that's a great thing to be passionate about. So that's terrific. So much potential there, really, for making an impact, right? That's big.
One other thing was that I think youth really need leadership today. I mentioned this, youth need leadership today. And if this leadership can come from mentors from within our organization, I think it can really make a difference in terms of a future generation of leaders. And would it be great to say a new generation of young leaders were trained by members of the International Mentoring Association? That is what I would like to see.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Mentoring can make such an impact in so many different contexts, right? I mean, in your communities, in your organizations, in your education, in your corporations. There's so many different ways to be able to pay that forward. Any parting thoughts, Dr. James?
Oh, we ended. I will always be involved in mentoring, and it's my love, it's my passion. Dr. Canton, who is a member of the advisory committee right now for the IMA, we both are working and collaborating on publications to deal with mentoring, but have it targeted towards what is happening in today's society. But our primary focus is still on the retention of students in higher education, because we are losing too many students today as a result of the pandemic. Online learning has hampered a lot of students, particularly minority students who have not had access, to online learning before. And we are trying, and also I continue to look at the statistics where men are not enrolling in colleges and universities like they used to. Not only Black men, but all men are not enrolling in colleges and universities today. And I would just like to see what we can do to get them involved again. And maybe we can form some mentoring relationships as a result of this. On the positive side, though, I am so pleased to see so many women who are enrolling in record numbers, in some cases, at institutions of higher education. And they are becoming our generation of leaders. And I just wish that they could get the pay and the equity as a result of their abilities as men have gotten in previous years. And I think mentoring can play a part of that, can play a major part in that aspect also. So this is what I'm focusing on at this time.
Well, amen. I couldn't agree more with those words as well. You know, we also have to get the cost of higher education down so that it's affordable for people to enroll in as well. So I'll add that to your parting thoughts as a way to get more women in, more men in, and
Yes.
you know, also enable people to mentor one another. Dr. James, I'm so grateful for this chance to talk to you. I'm also want to just thank you for your leadership. I mean, you know, as was evident from the biography, but if that wasn't enough from this conversation, your passion around mentoring, your contribution to the field of mentoring, your dedication and your discipline to the field of mentoring has made a difference. It's really why we are here. But I know that it's had a ripple effect throughout society in the years that you've been doing this. So I just want to thank you so much for your time.
And it's such a pleasure to meet you also. And I'm hoping that we will have further conversations or more interaction, you know, with one another. It has been great.
I hope so. I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day.